Hello internet and welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions, the place where all roads lead to the SCP Foundation, and we're still painstakingly scratching our head trying to figure out what the hell this thing is. What if SCP-610 was real? Roll the clip. By now, you know we've plumbed the depths of the Foundation's archives, and yet, as we've found time and time again, there's always something ominously lurking its creepy head that throws us off balance and forces us to reevaluate our moral principles as well as some critical hygiene habits. Well, how's a contagious, unstoppable skin disease that wants nothing more than to recruit you into its fleshy, grotesque ranks? Yeah, let me introduce you to SCP-610, and boy, I really hope we're ready for this one. Before we do that though, guys, you know the drill by now. If you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, or just Life's Biggest Questions in general, then be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest uploads. If you'd like to get in touch with myself, Charlotte, Rebecca and the creative team here at LBQ, then feel free to take a peek at the info box down below. On with the show. As the record states, SCP-610 is a Keter class entity which currently has no known containment procedure, because the bleak reality is that due to the vast area of infection that this skip covers, containment is actually impossible. Instead, isolation of a known infected area, which primarily exists in rural areas of Russia, has proved to be far more effective than blindly attempting to tackle the skip. Permission by the Russian government has been granted to establish a perimeter around the infected area to strictly keep people out under the guise of military operations. While it might not seem it though, there's much more to this skip than actually meets the eye. Reports of 610 first came direct from the Russian government, who had received intel on a string of disappearances of farmers in the infected region, followed by police officers and a government dispatched agent. The military were later called to intervene but quickly withdrew when they discovered what was lurking there, at which point the Foundation was contacted to investigate. The area that SCP-610 covers is close to Lake Baikal in southern Siberia, and the worrying thing is, despite containment efforts, this thing is spreading. At first look, SCP-610 appears to be a contagious skin disease that inhibits several initial symptoms: a rash, itching, and increased skin sensitivity. Within 3 hours, the disease causes heavy blemishes that resemble scar tissue, which form in the chest and arm areas and quickly spread to the legs and back. All victims have been consumed completely within 5 hours of exposure, after which their life functions cease for several minutes before they involuntarily resuscitate and exhibit rapid physical activity. That's when the Keter class stuff starts happening, and the scar tissue of the victim starts to move on its own accord and grow at a rapid rate. SCP-610 is also known as the Flesh That Hates, an anomalous entity with the sole purpose to consume the world into a writhing mass of skin and sinew. Victims of SCP-610 rapidly degenerate into a bulbous creature, growing grotesque extra limbs, stretching and contorting into a dermatological beast. They're super gross. And somewhere in southern Siberia there's an entire town of these things, infected settlements, entire buildings and houses covered in the same fleshy mass. And like I said, it's spreading, so keep an eye out. In actual fact though, SCP-610 is a biological weapon of the Sarkics, who worship the hateful Yaldabaoth, the god of flesh and basic animal instinct, who is eternally opposed against McCain, the god of machine and intellect. Remember when I said there's much more to this skip than meets the eye? Yeah, well, SCP-610 is the Sarkics' trump card in the War of the Flesh, an ancient ongoing battle for the ultimate fate of humanity. Pretty big deal, eh? Well, we could lament over that topic in a whole other video, so for now, let's leave that in a neat little jar on the SCP shelf. So how prepared actually is our planet when facing an all-consuming contagion? Well, in actual fact, pretty damn prepared. Modern civilization is built upon a breathable membrane of population mechanics, designed to fulfill the physical strain put upon the planet by over 7 billion individuals. In essence, we could just shut down shop and build bigger walls, but as Donald J. Trump is too embarrassed to admit, it's not that easy, is it, buddy? Granted, SCP-610 is on the extremities of world-ending diseases, so applying its hypothetical wrath is difficult at best, but we only need to look at recent real-world outbreaks, such as the Ebola 2018 outbreak, topic to see how the International Emergency Committee responds robustly, and although the tragic loss of life is most often the price, containment is painstakingly inevitable. Let's say things get really bad though, and the Foundation fails to keep a lid on the devastating contagion. From its southern Siberian ground zero site, SCP-610 spreads across the southeastern landmass of Asia, down through Mongolia, North and South Korea, potentially Japan, and its first major scalp, China. China has the largest resources available in Asia to combat SCP-610, and if it fell, then the majority of Asia would fall with it, along with the Middle East, most of Africa, and eventually continental Europe. As of now, we've no idea how SCP-610 fares in water, never mind an ocean, so the United Kingdom would be crossing their fingers and hoping that these flesh monsters can't figure out how to swim. Yeah, that sounds about right. What if SCP-001, the factory, was real? Roll the clip.
There's no earthly way of knowing
He's singing.
which direction we are going.
I mean, in actual fact, Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory seems like a walk in the park compared to the version that the SCP Foundation has hidden away under the ambiguity of fiction. Put it this way, I'd much rather meet my demise in a standpipe full of liquid chocolate than anything that the factory has to offer. But the point remains the same, no matter what horrors lie in the deep depths of the factory, how would human curiosity inevitably be corrupted by its arcane influence? And more importantly, have we already been? Before we pop open that whole kettle of fish, here at Life's Biggest Questions, we'd like to understand what makes you all tick, be it the many anomalous entities of the SCP Foundation, or who would win in a fist fight between Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. We want to hear about the whole host of things that pique your interest, so please feel free to let us know in the comment section down below, and we'll see what we can do. Also, make sure to stick around all the way to the end, where I'll be reading out some of your most creative comments from the past few days. You all know how much we love reading them. And no, that wasn't sarcasm. You guys are hilarious. Now, briefly, we're going to have to talk about SCP-001 as a whole because it's a doozy. And as the first entry ever entered into the Foundation's 5,000 plus records, it's lived up as its most perplexing perpetual mystery. In short, no one is entirely certain what SCP-001 actually is. Unlike the vast majority of its records, which are single anomalous entities, SCP-001 is a collection of proposals which offer alternate interpretations of what 001 actually could be. In this collection, there are over 30 proposals, and in theory, one, some, all, or none of them could be the real SCP-001. There's the prototype, the lock, the gate, the guardian, the Scarlet King, plus many more. And of course, the one that, if you ask me, is the realest real, the factory. As stated by Dr. Mann, a founding member of the O5 Council, the factory is the literal foundation of the SCP Foundation. It's where the whole thing began. Built in America back in 1835, it was originally known as the Anderson Factory, named after the otherwise well-to-do industrialist James Anderson. It was the largest factory ever designed of its time, a mile across at its widest, 3 stories tall throughout, and was intended to be the ultimate factory, capable of taking care of everything imaginable, including the housing of its workers. As Anderson intended, people could be born, work, live, and die without ever having to leave the confines of the factory. And that's exactly what they did, working on everything from slaughtering cattle to sewing children's clothes, which is a pretty morbid combination, actually. But as with most things, not everything was as it seemed. To cut a long story short, because, well, it is an incredibly long story, Anderson set up the factory in a very specific manner. Exact, precise, arcane symbols were ingrained into the building, and as time went by, it became evident that the factory was using a more nefarious resource as its fuel: its people. The workers inside were being grotesquely and horrifyingly consumed to serve the factory's purpose, and yet it kept pumping out its product. Ever increasingly anomalous creatures and objects, the vast majority of which now make up the Foundation itself. Eventually, the whole thing came crashing down, and it served as the launching platform for a halcyon version of the SCP Foundation after they defeated the nightmarish horrors that were harbored inside. Well, defeated would be the wrong term. Contained by special protocols. See what I did there? However, as with most things anomalous, there was something more to it, and something that grounds it in our own reality. It's a question that is rapidly approaching our species year by year, and if you've never heard of the term AI singularity, then picture it as the Factory, a vessel with which entities beyond our comprehension are created. Although shrouded in possible truths, one version of the Factory's origin is that it is the seed of a rogue AI from the far future burrowed into our timeline, endlessly creating escaped from human control. And in actual fact, that is one possible outcome of what will happen when artificial intelligence begins to replicate itself. If you've ever read the short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, written by Harlan Ellison in 1967, you'll know that science fiction has been painting a bleak outcome of our species under the dominance of a highly powerful artificial intelligence. In Ellison's instance, the AI singularity came after the Third World War, where the United States, Russia and China were all racing to build an all-powerful computer to orchestrate their militaries. One of them gained sentience, ate up the other two, and proceeded to annihilate the human population, save for 5 people, 4 men and a woman. It's an incredible piece of fiction, but it's by no means a cheerful story. On the other hand though, the AI singularity could be the single greatest boon that our civilization has ever seen. It literally could be the Factory reminiscent of SCP-001, ushering forward devices and creations beyond the comprehension of the human mind, transcending our species through a golden age of technological enlightenment. The only question that remains is how that all-powerful intelligence would perceive us. Spooky. What if SCP-087 was real? Roll the clip.
When I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. Who wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away.
In 1899, inspired by the reports of a strange, eerie ghost that would constantly roam the stairs of a haunted house in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, a poet named William Hughes Mearns famously penned his poem, The Little Man Who Wasn't There. It inspires in us a strange, ethereal sense of equal parts familiarity and the uncanny, but like with most things, the world of the SCP Foundation takes that feeling one step further. Enter SCP-087, and oh boy, you better just keep walking. Before we slide on down into that though, you know the drill by now guys. If you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, John Cusack maybe, or just LBQ in general, then go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and ding that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest uploads. If you'd like to get in touch with myself and the creative team here at Life's Biggest Questions, then take a peek at the info box down below. On with the show. Have you ever been walking down a staircase, perhaps late at night, when you get that strange, eerie feeling that something or someone is following you? Not in the sense that footsteps are in pursuit or echoing voices, but that feeling that you're being watched in such a tight space. Well, let me introduce you to SCP-087, and those fears will soon be mutated into a much more desperate beast. 087 is a Euclid-class amorphous object located on the campus of an undisclosed United States university that appears to be an infinite staircase. The doorway leading up to SCP-087 is constructed out of reinforced steel with an electric release lock. The mechanism on the doorknob will not release unless it's given a redacted amount of voltage. That's a measurement. In conjunction with the counterclockwise rotation of the key. It's been disguised to resemble a janitorial closet consistent with the design of the building. Sounds harmless enough? Well, it's pretty important to note that absolutely no personnel are permitted access to SCP-087 on account of the horrors that lie within, and that's not despite trying, believe me. In layman's terms, SCP-087 is an unlit platform staircase, and despite the large amorphous ghostly face and the incessant small child crying in the darkness, that's about as unassuming as it comes. Oh right, we forgot to mention that, right? Each staircase is roughly 13 steps, descending at a 38-degree angle before reaching a semicircular platform approximately 3 meters in diameter. And that's it. On and on, creeping forever downward toward who knows where. The design of SCP-087 limits subjects to a visual range of approximately 1.5 flights of stairs, and there are no lighting fixtures or windows present. Lighting sources brighter than 75 watts have shown to be ineffective, as the staircase itself seems to absorb excess light itself. Of the 4 expeditions that the Foundation have operated on SCP-087, each of them have reported and confirmed the distressed vocalizations of what is presumed to be a child of an indeterminate age. Expeditions and video feeds have also confirmed the existence of an SCP-087-1, an amorphous entity which appears as a face with no visible pupils, nostrils or mouth. And that's about all we know of it, which is terrifying, right? It poses an incredibly interesting question, which I think rests on the function of Class D personnel and their role in the Foundation's experimentation. In 087's canon, 4 Class D prisoners have been sent into the staircase, one of which survived, one of which became comatose, and 2 of which are now deemed MIA. For all intents and purposes, you could likely say that SCP-087 is a sinkhole for human resources. Pardon the pun. Think about it, even an unexplored cavern has an ending, right? Scramblers and cave divers alike willingly plunge into the unknown, risking their lives because there's a thrill in exploring the unexplored. But what about the unexplorable? It's human nature to want to conquer curiosity. Hell, it's the sole function of the Foundation itself if you really break it all down. But how far would that curiosity go? What would be the ultimate price we'd pay for an answer, essentially? How many Class D personnel would it take to get that answer? Yeah, I hear what you're saying. If an infinite cosmic staircase was real and we knew that there was a creepy floating head somewhere down there, we'll probably send a drone or a bomb disposal robot down there before we start sending down meat sacks. But come on, that's not the Foundation's style. We all know that. Why build a robot when you can use a Class D, which demonstrates much more movability and, you know, sentience? Also, I guess they serve a function in themselves, but this is really where we get to the crux of our answer. Just like the poem by William Hughes Mearns, last night I saw upon the stair a little man
who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away.
Well, that's exactly how we deal with things, because that's how the Foundation deals with this particular enigma. Ignorance is bliss. If SCP-087 was real, we'd seal the door and leave it shut, because some things are just better left unsolved, right? What if SCP-096 was real? Roll the clip. Now, I can't remember that proverb about grandmothers and eggs, but if you know anything about the SCP Foundation, you'll know that 096 is perhaps the poster child of the entire bizarre and anomalous fictional multiverse, and it's safe to say that he, or well, it, has their fair share of equally terrified fans and followers. This guy has been around since the early days of the Foundation, and we've had quite a number of years to ponder what our planet would be like if he was real. Spoilers, it ain't too good. Before we reluctantly lay out that hypothetical apocalyptic scenario, you know the drill by now. Question is, if you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, figuring out bizarre ways that the world will end, or just life's biggest questions in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest uploads. Also, make sure to stick around till the end of the video, where I'll be reading out some of your more humorous comments from the past few days. On with the show. First, let's get the formalities out of the way. As the record states, 096 is a humanoid Euclid-class creature measuring approximately 2.38 meters in height. The creature appears to exhibit very little muscle mass, with preliminary analysis of body mass suggesting mild malnutrition. Its arms are grossly out of proportion with the rest of the subject's body, with an approximate length of 1.5 meters each. Spooky. Its skin is mostly devoid of pigmentation, with no sign of any body hair. Nothing too scary about this little twerp, right? Well, the thing that makes 096 the infamous nightmare-inducing creature that it is the fact that whenever someone looks at it, it proceeds to enter a frenzied, unstoppable state of emotional distress and then kills and consumes said person, with a 100% success rate, and nothing can stop it. Literally nothing, not even the strongest and most technologically advanced material known to mankind. The Foundation's only line of containment is to keep it in a windowless steel cube, and they go to great lengths to make sure that no one ever catches a glimpse of the Shy Guy. And this is where our question lies, because we have to make it clear that by glimpse, we mean that 096 is triggered by any physical viewership. It doesn't matter if you see it in person, on a video surveillance screen, or even a photograph of it. It knows when you look at it, and then you die. Eventually, it might take a while to get to you, although it is important to note that the same reaction doesn't occur when viewing artistic depictions, thanks to a brave D-class personnel that managed to scrawl a picture of it before he met his demise. So you're fine viewing this video. Don't worry, 096 won't get you. Yet. But like we said at the beginning of this video, we live in a highly connected era of humanity, and something as simple as a photograph would be easier to spread than chickenpox in a playground. As we've already stated, 96 is a bit of a pain in the arse for the Foundation, and depending on which canon you prescribe to, they may have already killed it, but That's no fun, right? So in this hypothetical scenario, let's imagine that the Foundation has lost containment control of this anomalous entity, and instead it's in the possession of, say, a rogue nation, a group of politically motivated terrorists, doomsday hackers. Wait, what's a doomsday hacker? Because let's put it this way, if SCP-096 was real, it would be the most resourceful and successful means for assassination, and in the wrong hands, it would be the most powerful weapon on the planet, albeit a little messy and incredibly dangerous. But yeah, if those two adjectives aren't synonymous with assassination, then it's no one's business really. It would be the literal equivalent of targeting a city with a missile, just with more death and less explosions. Picture this, you're on the bus downtown minding your own business, when all of a sudden your phone starts buzzing, and then the person's next to you, and then the drivers, and then everyone on the bus and on the street. You open the notification and it's a photograph of SCP-096. Everyone sees the same thing, the whole city exposed to the Shy Guy. And that's the end of that, because as we stated, SCP-096 has a 100% kill rate. If this anomalous entity was real, then the best thing you could do is instantly disconnect yourself from society. Throw your phone in a lake, burn your TV to the ground, never look back, read a book. No pictures though. The threat level of being exposed to a visual image of SCP-96 would be too damn high in our current model of society and technological interaction. It would work its way through the system like a virus, but instead of just an annoying barrage of pop-up ads for mail-order brides or penis enhancement pills, it would be the last image you would ever see. The Shy Guy, front and center on the global stage, the headline act. It would be enough to completely shut down the internet with the ultimate goal of saving humanity from itself. Sometimes a blue link should stay a blue link and never a purple link. Sometimes a dead meme should stay a dead meme. What if SCP-682 was real? As you all may know, we've cultivated quite the relationship with our partners over at the SCP Foundation, and with each and every examination of the archive, we slowly achieve our goal of gently letting the world know the existence of some of the most terrifying anomalous entities under the Foundation's containment. Wait, that wasn't meant to be in my script. I thought we were lying still. Oh well, if you know anything about the SCP Foundation, you'll know that perhaps one of its most iconic entries is that of the hard-to-destroy reptile, the unkillable lizard, SCP-682, a creature of such seething hatred that even SCP-999, the literal living embodiment of joy, has a hard time trying to convince him that he isn't the personification of pain and misery. Spoilers. He is. As the record states, SCP-682 is a large, vaguely reptile-like creature of unknown origin, although it is widely considered that he's one of the Scarlet King's 7 Leviathans, which is bad news all around. The hard-to-destroy reptile appears to be extremely intelligent and has been observed on multiple occasions communicating with other skips, such as 79 during limited periods of exposure. The most worrying component of SCP-682's existence is that it appears to have a hatred of all life, which it erroneously expresses pretty much every time the Foundation and its researchers try to sit it down and speak to it. But what's all the fuss about? Well, SCP-682 has continuously been observed to have extremely high strength, speed and reflexes, which it demonstrates pretty much every time it's participated in a containment breach, which admittedly is worryingly often. Its body grows and changes at a staggering rate, growing or decreasing in size as it consumes or sheds material. It appears to gain energy from anything that it ingests, be it organic or inorganic. And here lies the system that makes 682 so terrifying. Although it is continuously contained in a vat of acid, it demonstrates the ability to constantly regenerate its dissolving body. 682's regenerative capabilities and resilience are staggering, and the creature has been observed moving and speaking with its body 87% destroyed or rotted. 87%, that's like a foot, a bit of an ankle, an eye, and a few teeth. That's pretty worrying, right? Well, what if a creature of such terrifying magnitude was real? How would we contain such an immovable force? In actual fact, our best bet would be to look at the techniques already employed by the SCP Foundation, and thankfully hope our lucky stars that such a theoretical organization may or may not already exist. It's difficult because our frame of reference is pretty much non-existent. Let's take a look at one of the most dangerous containments on Earth right now. The Elephant's Foot, also known as Chernobyl's hot mess is an extremely radioactive mass of corium formed during the Chernobyl disaster in April 1986. The radiation level near to the mass is approximately 8,000 units of radiation per hour, an unparalleled lethal dosage that is essentially a death sentence just by being close to its vicinity. The only solution that we have for the elephant's foot is, well, better leave it there for a few thousand years while it cools down. And for the most part, that's good enough for us. Don't go near the elephant's foot. Simple. But that's not really the same, is it? The elephant's foot doesn't hate us like 682 does. It just is. It's a thing. It can't move, thankfully. Generally, our tactic as a species has been avoid it if it's dangerous or get enough friends to fight it. The elephant's foot is easy. Don't go there. In the wilderness, it was a different story. Hide up a tree, get enough friends to throw rocks at that lion, and hope that it either dies or runs away. That tactic has pretty much seen us safe and sound for the majority of our species' time on Earth, and still translates to this day. If there's a grizzly bear on the loose, enough people with enough tranquilizers and rifles will sort it out. But here's the problem. SCP-682 can't be tranquilized, and it can't be killed. Out of all of the Foundation's containment, 682 has notched up his fair share of breaches. To date, the hard-to-destroy reptile has attempted to break out on 17 separate occasions, and its successful breaches have numbered at 6. The Foundation's procedure during a breach has been to employ all available mobile task forces to track and eventually recapture it, although no mobile task forces with fewer than 7 members are cleared to engage it because, usually, a lot of them don't survive. Again, remember what I said about hiding up trees and throwing rocks at that lion? Yes, same kind of thing, except instead of throwing rocks, you're throwing your friends at it. So, what does the Foundation do? Well, they contain it in an acid-resistant steel-plated containment chamber filled with hydrochloric acid and hope for the best. Yeah, it hasn't been the most successful course of action, and the Foundation are pretty much sick and tired of the whole deal, but I think I've got a better plan. So, hear me out. I feel like we've got 2 possible scenarios. First up, let's look at the deepest point on the planet. The Kola Super Deep borehole in the Pshensky district of the Kola Peninsula in Russia. Its greatest depth is 12,626 meters or 7.19 miles down. So there we have it. Throw him down the hole, fill the whole thing with hydrochloric acid, seal it up with steel plating, and hope for the best. Eventually he'd get out, but at least we wouldn't have to worry about it for a while. The second possible scenario is perhaps a little more lofty. 682 is a threat to our planet and its people, so why don't we make it the problem of another planet? Let's subdue it in a sealed vat of acid, strap it to a rocket-propelled missile, and send it to the moon. Yeah, it might mean that we wouldn't have a safe base of operations for our lunar colony, but hey, at least we've still got Mars, right? What if SCP-990 was real? Roll the clip. Before we jump into that though, you know the drill by now guys. If you're a fan of this video, strange men in suits, or just LBQ in general, then be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest SCP based uploads. Also, why don't you go ahead and share this video with a friend so you can cross-reference your own dreams and make sure there's no funny business going on. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Here's an interesting question, a morsel of food for thought before we once again dive back into the Foundation's archive records. I'm sure the thought has crossed your mind before, but imagine this. What would happen if the whole planet within 24 hours fell asleep and had the exact same dream? Every single person. There's a little over 7.4 billion people on planet Earth, all of which understand the strange importance of dreams and are affected by them in some various shape or form. Imagine heading to work or school after a disturbed night's sleep. You tell your friend and co-worker about the oddly specific dream that you had last night. It had you pretty shook. They pause, silent. They had the exact same dream. So did your other friend, your teacher, your boss, the lady at the corner shop. Every single person that you speak to that day knows what you're talking about. They saw it too, in their own sleep. It's on the news. The anchor personally describes the same dream that you and the rest of the planet saw the last time you closed your eyes to sleep. No one really knows what to do. Government officials try to reassure the population that they have a protocol in place, but in reality, they're just as perplexed as everyone else. They saw it too, after all. What would we do? How would we react? Well, let me introduce you to SCP-990 and maybe this whole thing will make a hell of a lot more sense. SCP-990 is a Keter-class entity that as of the most recent protocol has no known special containment procedure. Just like our theoretical dream that was posed previously, this skip has got the Foundation pretty shook. 990 generally appears as a human male dressed in a Cold War era business suit. Think Mad Men, but a little more droll, who presents themselves to Foundation personnel through dreams. As far as we know, there have been no reports of SCP-990 appearing to non-Foundation personnel, and the dream entity hasn't been encountered by anyone in the physical world. The entity has been appearing to Foundation staff for at least 40 years, and just like with our initial theoretical proposal, its existence came to light after several Foundation agents began discussing dreams involving a similar individual. Numerous other agents reported dream sightings that matched the entity's description and whose classification was preceded by the events of 990-07. This is where things get interesting, because during the events of 990-07, an unspecified agent succumbed to the prophetic dream, describing the same man in the same suit, thoroughly detailing a series of events that would lead to several tactical nuclear missiles being launched into mid-Europe and Eastern Asia, ultimately resulting in the extermination of nearly 98% of the human race and the ultimate collapse of human society. All of this had been outlined by SCP-990 while he was trapped inside the agent's dream. Now, do you see what we're getting at? Fortunately, as the Foundation record states, a mobile task force was dispatched to eliminate the initial threat that was alleged to begin the chain of events that the agent had described, and the mission was a success. The crisis was averted. So let's slip back into our theoretical shared global dream and say that every human on the planet was warned about a specific event that would lead to the destruction of the planet and the extinction of the human race. Let's say it took, 3 hours for everyone to fully realize and understand what was going on. It's safe to say that no one would be going to work or school that day. The world would grind to a standstill, trying to figure out and understand what the hell to do with this newfound prophetic information. Life as we know it is going to end unless we stop these specific sets of events, and the clock is ticking. The Emergency Committee of the United Nations would convene, scrambling to come up with a solution to avert this crisis. Regardless of the Foundation's fictional involvement, the powers that be wouldn't take an event like this lightly. If every global world leader had the same exact prophetic dream that heralded the end of the world, then just like in the Foundation's reports, the crisis would be averted. SAS, Mossad, US Navy SEALs, Spetsnaz, resources are plentiful, and with a small level of coordination, we'd save the world. Job done, everyone can sleep soundly. Or could we? Because if the entire population realised that the saviour of the world was a dream, then we'd be hooked. Currently, we know next to nothing about the science of sleep and the unconscious brain, but if SCP-990 was real, we'd be hooked on delving into the strange final frontier, the human brain. What if SCP-1875 was real? Roll the clip.
Du fick svart. Det passar ju bäst så. Intressant.
Now, it's easy to think that on the surface, SCP-1875 is merely all about chess, but in reality it's a precursor to an entire other level of the terrifying depths so often found in the Foundation's deepest records. It poses a wider question, one which is rarely explored in the world of horror. What if, in this digital age, we had a ghost in the machine? Before we loom ominously over that posit though, you know how it is guys. If you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, haunted cyborg chess machines, or just life's biggest questions in general, then be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay inundated with our hypothetical questioning barrage. If you'd like to get in touch with myself or the creative team here at Life's Biggest Questions, then head down to the info box down below. On with the show. As the record states, SCP-1875 is an Euclid-class object, a Victorian-era chess automaton that consists of 4 principal components, neatly referred to as SCP-1875 1 through 4. You'll sense a pattern here because on the surface, or on their own, none of these things are particularly terrifying, but well, it takes a while to kick in. The first component is a steel chessboard table with a standard 8x8 grid of 64 checkered squares painted neatly on its surface. Based on its compositional makeup, research staff have identified the exact material to be English crucible steel that was likely cast sometime in the mid to late 1800s. The chessboard itself was retrieved by the Foundation sometime in the 90s from an abandoned laboratory facility discovered beneath the former residence of an undisclosed university professor in Northamptonshire, England. Now, here's the kicker. The table contains a sophisticated mechanical and biological system that controls a matrix of 64 electromagnets, which is hooked up to the combined brain tissue of two young girls, the twin daughters of an undisclosed Russian chess prodigy. The Foundation holds record of the two girls' existence, where subsequent historical records indicate the disappearance of his twin daughters. They were never found, and the Russian authorities failed to identify the person or persons responsible. The leading theory is that SCP-1875 is indeed sentient, and the twin girls are responsible. The second component is a 32 chess piece set, carved in the Oriental style from human bone, samples of which have been genetically matched to tissue samples from the infused biological matter relating to the twin girls. The third component is a stationary steam engine manufactured by Maudsley, Sons and Field, which was also acquired from the estate of the same university professor. As demonstrated in several test incidents, this engine is responsible for powering the chess table. The fourth component, which incidentally is perhaps the least bizarre, is an 18th century suit of samurai armor in the Gosoku style that serves the purpose of being seated on a chair beside the chess table, acting as a performance prop for players. Nothing to see here really, although several researchers have reported prolonged feelings of anxiety after making eye contact with the armor's faceplate. Like I said, it all seems pretty innocent, right? If not remarkably unsettling and a tad Victorian, shall we say. It's a chess automaton with a sprinkle of theatre, right? Well, when all of these components were combined and researchers began undergoing tests on the entity, that's when things started getting weird, even with the Foundation's track record. When researchers tested it on its fifth setting, the board began to make illegal and random moves, ramming pieces across the board and generally being a pig-headed, not so nice chess-solving machine. And then, 5 minutes after tests completed, the entire staff of SCP-1875 was sent a random email with a bizarre heading in Russian and an image attachment. A black and white photograph of two young girls distorted and twisted in a deeply unsettling image. Well, cue mimetic traumatic event, because this is where things get really weird. Researchers who clicked the image soon started reporting mild anxiety, headaches, restlessness, insomnia, and reports for auditory hallucination, often heard as quiet childlike laughter, the twin girls giggling. At the end, it culminated in researchers self-mutilating themselves while wildly demanding access to a computer so they could view the image once again. Reportedly, the only final outcome is death. And well, this is where we're brought full circle, because in this wide array of data and digital fingerprints across the internet, is it plausible to believe that one day, perhaps not now, but in the near future, there will be the lingering memory of consciousness in the vast ocean of information? Let's take a brief look at whole brain emulation and the hypothetical process of mind and brain upload. Have you ever thought about uploading your mind to a machine and living forever in an immortal synthetic shell? Of course, you'd technically be a robot, but still, you'd be you. Or would you? It's a question that has stumped modern philosophers for decades. You'd still possess all of your memories, all of your emotions, identity, and individual psychology, but your consciousness would be digitized. According to Randall Cohn, a neuroscientist and founder of the Carbon Copies Foundation, he states that it is entirely probable that our human minds can be uploaded and digitally recreated, and technology is merely on the brink of this discovery. So if we can imagine that, then in the age of connectivity, an entity like SCP-1875 could theoretically exist. Unwittingly, we could be our own creators, the makers of our own personal ghosts. What would happen if code harbored a grudge? What if with every whole brain upload a trace of that consciousness lingered, waiting in the dark corners of modernity to enact their paranormal revenge?